Welcome back to the Afterword, a conversation about the future of words. Amy and I are glad to have Rob Henderson, Gates Scholar at Cambridge University, and Dillon Smith, Content Manager for Carey Nieuwhof Communications, here with us to continue our conversation about moral outrage and social media. Let's start off this section talking about who shames whom on social media. What roles do education, class, and economic prosperity play in who gets shamed, who gets to do the shaming, and who gets used as a pawn in public displays of moral outrage?
Rob, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's an interesting question. I'm most familiar with Twitter, so I guess I can go into that one. The users tend to be disproportionately college educated. They earn, they're disproportionately likely to earn more than $75,000 a year, relative to the average American. And so Twitter is this sort of like digital water cooler for white collar professionals, people who work in offices and basically they're not doing, sort of manual labor. But of course, like there are many other kinds of people who use the platform as well. But generally speaking, the people who engage in the shaming are particularly affluent, particularly well-to-do. There was a study, I think it was this was in the Atlantic, finding that social justice activists are like 3 times more likely to have postgraduate degrees, way more likely to earn more than $100,000 a year. Like this is sort of the, the sort of intellectual vanguard or something, the people who love to tell other people what's right and what's wrong. In a way that sort of makes sense, because if you're working a blue collar job and you're just trying to make ends meet, you don't have time to like figure out who's saying what about Chris Pratt or whatever's going on, with the latest, Hollywood gossip or celebrity wrongdoing or whatever. But what I find fascinating is that like every once in a while, the class disparities do sort of like manifest online. I saw this video, or was it? I think it was just an article of like, this was a security guard at a college who I guess he had liked some tweets from a Republican, and some college students found out about this and, raised outcry about it, and the students sort of going after this guy. And then I think it went online to social media, and I think this guy ended up closing his Twitter account. I don't know. He either resigned or was fired. Something happened subsequently with his employment situation. And, this is a guy who didn't go to college, in all likelihood makes a fraction of what these kids are going to go on to make in their lives. But because he, didn't have the same beliefs as these, sort of well-to-do kids, he had to suffer for it. So I think that there are ways that, social class and economics and all these things are intertwined with moral outrage.
I'd like to follow up on that a little bit, if you don't mind. How do you feel about white-collar kids from six-figure families sort of being the self-appointed moral vanguard for low-income people and people from marginalized communities? Is there there's a power imbalance in compassionate work? And is that a power imbalance that we need to be really concerned about, whether we're on social media or anywhere else, when you decide you're going to stand up for someone else and you have more power than the person you're standing up for? What are some of the potential pitfalls?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about some of those questions, at least with regard to, what's considered a moral transgression in different social classes, different social circles, right? I mean, the kinds of things that, students at Yale might say are outrageous would not even register on the radar of, some of the people I served in the military with, or some of the guys I grew up with. And so it's sort of subsided, but especially early on, I did like sort of feel this sense of irritation at these kinds of people because I just know that like if the guys I went to high school with, if they met them, they would totally not, they'd be disdain, they would just not, they wouldn't like them. And I don't think that's right, because just because you grow up in that class and you're around those kinds of people and you know the right things to say in the right environments, that doesn't make you a better person. Like that's, a lot of that is just luck at the end of the day. And so yeah, I do think there is this sort of imbalance. I don't really know how to correct it. One way I've been trying to do it is just talk more about it. I've written quite a bit now about social class differences and how I think a lot of the upper class, the sort of white collar class, are unaware, of their own norms that they adhere to. It's the water they swim in. The old joke about asking a fish what's water. Well, to them, that is, a lot of the people at places like Yale, they trained their whole lives to get there. They were around people who were always going to be the kind of people who were going to go there. And so it's just different when you're not from that world and you, maybe you like a tweet like the security guard did and you don't understand what the expectations are. I think a lot of it can also prevent social mobility too for people from, more rural or blue collar backgrounds. It doesn't even have to be rural, honestly. Like even if you're from like a sort of lower income urban environment, you're not going to know like the discourse of polite society, right? And so I think it can create barriers for upward mobility.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I guess it just bugs me personally, maybe this is coming from a low income background, to hear people who want to love low income people as a social group because it's nice and it comes across well on social media, but then they don't like the actual people that they meet who are from these marginalized groups or who are from a low income background, and will make fun of them if they're the wrong kind of poor people, or if they are from the wrong whatever. They start then to make their own moral judgments. It's very bizarre. But anyway, I just wanted to get on that path with you because you set my mind.
Some moral outrage, Holland, that you need to express.
Yeah, I do. What about you, Dillon? To come back to the original question.
I was going to keep going on that for a second.
Oh, okay, go for it.
So I'm curious about two things. One, college, at least many of the state colleges in the States have overwhelmingly left-leaning politicians in their staffs. At least, so like here in Omaha, I have a couple of friends who are RAs at University of Omaha, and they're taught some things morally that I think are completely wrong. Like I don't want to give any details because they're pretty gross, and I guess I don't know if I can say that on this podcast. So I'm curious if it's more likely for people to be college educated on Twitter to have this outrage. I wonder if there's more people politically leaning on that outrage scale, just because of what colleges are teaching in some places. Now, I think the STEM fields are phenomenal. I think PhD programs are pretty safe. So I'm curious about that. That's just, I don't know if there's any evidence behind it, but anecdotally, I'm seeing some pretty nasty things being taught in some of the colleges here in town. So, and it's a little concerning.
Just to jump in, I went to evangelical Christian colleges, and if we were allowed to run Twitter,
that's very true.
we would be. We would just have picked a different set of issues. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think that's a good flag. And then there was something you said that I wanted to double click on. Maybe I'll think about it. To answer your original question, who shames whom on social media? I mean, everybody's getting shamed a little bit. Like, I know if I go and look at 3 different accounts that I can name right now on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, I know I can find people shaming different people for different reasons. I can find people shaming the rioters. I can find people shaming anyone for not rioting for Black Lives Matter today. And I can go and find people who are shaming any religious group for any reason. Like, it's really not that hard. So I think it's partially what we mentioned before of the echo chambers. That's concerning me. So I don't think we have to look very far to find people shaming everyone. And that's concerning. I have a favorite band. This is terribly unscientific, but they have a line in a song that always hit well with me. And the bands need to breathe, but they have a line that says, when the fight's on the way, or the fight's on the way when the sides have been chosen. And sadly, I think we're just choosing sides online all day, every day. And what the future of that could be is very concerning in my mind. So yeah, that's what I was thinking for this question.
Excellent. Because that kind of leads us again as we think about a trend for the future and what we risk. A lot of times we talk about that return on investment. And I heard you in our last episode, Dillon, talk about financial expectations and the gain and what you get, because there has to be some sort of payoff. If you really want to just even think socially, if you want to think behaviorally, you have an antecedent, you have a behavior, and you have a consequence, and there's a payoff. So there's a risk, though, to some of these behaviors because there is a cost involved, and you kind of alluded to that, both of you. Rob, what will be the cost, the outcome of this trend in 5, 10, I don't even want to go too far down the road because it's almost like, are we 5 weeks, 10 weeks? We won't have too far to look down for this trend. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of for that reason I tend to shy away from making specific predictions. I mean, who would have predicted like Halloween of 2019 that a year later, we'd be wearing masks and like there'd be a global pandemic. And so, yeah, I just think that like a lot of, I think, was it Yogi Berra who said prediction is hard, especially about the future. And so I'm just a little wary about that. But I will say that given the current trajectory we're on, our moral fashions are changing so rapidly that we're currently seeing people get targeted for posts and things they said many years ago. And they said those things when those statements were widely accepted within polite society, right? So if I dig up something that you posted on Facebook in 2009, maybe at that time it was okay. I mean, a lot of people forget, but even President Obama was against gay marriage in 2009, right? And so, you can go back and find things and share them later. People change their minds or whatever. One thing that could happen is that things that we say today that are perfectly fine within the bounds of conventional discussion, polite society, can be held against us in 2027, right? In 2027, someone can say, oh, look at this thing that you posted in 2020. And we all thought that was okay to say back then. So we're saying things we don't even know are wrong. And that's something that I worry about.
I really appreciate that. And I think that's a little bit where you both were talking in our previous episode about this idea of grace. And while you may be the person not dogpiling this time, you might be the person dogpiling next time. And so, when I think about things in my past, I am so grateful that every day is a new day and that I have an opportunity to be a lifelong learner. And there may be times I'm going to need to pivot and change. But I think I'm hopeful that maybe in this season of moral outrage, that will be a part of the trend, is that we will be more forgiving of people's comments from the past based on what we now know in the present. I hope that will be something that we can think about. How about you, Dillon?
Yeah, this is concerning to me. It is hard to make predictions. So I think we're going to do more and more alienation of in-person relationships with online dialogue. And that's concerning. And that's one thing that we're trying to talk about as a company for religious organizations. Like if you're trying to serve someone, so let's say we have a homeless shelter, right? And that homeless shelter has a couple executives that work there that say a couple things that maybe it scares off a couple people because of their own political beliefs. We're not doing them any favors. Like you're not reaching those people with your services because you scared them off with what you've said online, so I think that's concerning. And I don't think that that's getting better. Like some companies are doing a good job of hey, don't be posting dumb stuff online, but it's still getting through quite a bit. So that's a little concerning. And I don't know. I can see multiple scenarios going forward. I can see maybe people just realize, okay, this is bad for me. I'm going to take less time in this. Do I think that's going to happen? No, not at all. But I can pray and I can hope that's what's happening. That's what's going to happen. And that people wake up and realize like, oh, maybe I do need some healthy boundaries around this topic. Or, maybe I do need to leave my phone outside my bedroom at night before I go to bed. And so I think that's like best case scenario is people just change and then we're not outraged anymore. Worst case scenario is pretty ugly. And we don't need to go into detail, but like, tribalism has been a thing in human nature for tens of hundreds of millions of years. And I don't really want to go back to that very much.
Yeah. Appreciate those answers. Thank you.
So let's talk about fixing it. Rob, do you think that social media companies have a responsibility to address the use of social media?
Well, I used to think this question was more complicated, but now I think that these companies do bear some responsibility. I used to think like, people can sort of decide for themselves and individual responsibility and these kinds of things. But, the more I learn about what's going on with social media companies and Silicon Valley, I mean, individuals don't really have a chance against companies that have limitless amounts of money and the world's best behavioral scientists trying to bypass our defenses, right? Like you have no chance against the smartest people with the most money trying to get you to open the app and click and so on. There was a quote, I think this was from an article in Bloomberg, where this tech employee said that the best minds of our generation are trying to figure out how to get people to click on ads. And I'm not sure what like specific, like practically could change this or stem this tide. But I have heard an interesting suggestion. I have no idea if it's even possible to get this implemented or how this work exactly. But there's a psychologist, Brian Earp, who suggested an eye rolling button on Twitter. So currently, there's the like and there's the retweet and you can comment. But he suggested that, so basically like right now, if someone posts something rude or insulting, it takes very little effort to just click like or click retweet or whatever. But if you want to signal your disapproval of something, you have to like type a comment, which is, it's more effortful and it's more socially risky to like comment on someone's post. But if there was a simple way to say like, hey, this wasn't cool, like stop doing this, and just a little eye roll button, just click that. And if enough people click, then we can kind of learn like, oh, you shouldn't be a jerk online because you got more eye rolls than likes, this kind of thing. So I think like something like that could work. I'm not entirely convinced, but maybe. Yeah. And of course we'd have to convince the social media companies to adopt this, but
I'd be a little concerned that people just weaponize that, all of a sudden I thought, there's two guys that I know are on opposite ends of a war right now. And that's Sean King, who's very much like Black Lives Matter over here. And like, will post both real and somewhat messed with videos on occasion. And then Donut Operator, who is a very much pro police account. So what would it like? The problem with that button is I can see either Sean King or Donut Operator just retweeting the other's tweets and saying, everyone go eye roll this right now. Like everyone just go hate it. So I like the idea. I'd be interested because maybe more people, you start getting more followers just because they want to eye roll every tweet you post, Yeah.
I'm sure there are like all these potential second order effects that, that I'm not thinking of. And, but yeah. I mean, that was just one idea. It's also possible that nothing will work and we'll just have to like see what happens.
Yeah. Nerve-wracking.
They did add the little icon on Facebook, the little care icon, and I have seen that really take off and, people, it seems like a little soft, gentle. So I think the eye roll thing, first of all, I think it's hilarious. Because I just, at this point in 2020 pandemic, I just am just having, that's, I think my go-to. I just think everything's hilarious right now. I mean, it's just so funny. So I think that would be great to have, and at least it's something. And then let me ask you guys too about some of these analytics with the listening. I've had people with some of these smartphones or something, and all of a sudden they'll say something in their home and this thing is already popping up in their feed. So kind of that big brothery thing, is that something that, could help with some of that moral outrage and, to kind of stop some of the, as you were saying, the echo chambers?
So are you saying they could listen to you and try to calm the outrage down through that?
Or just if they're hearing that, since that's already there, and they're hearing some of that
Since
social.
big tech has so much data, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Since they have so much data, can they use that data to shape the conversation?
Yeah. We've got a firestorm over here about this topic. Maybe we can,
calm it down.
Yeah.
I wonder, Rob, I'd love to hear your take on this. What if they change the algorithms to defavor those anger, words, where the algorithm currently just prioritizes engaged content. Well, we've learned that human nature can be pretty terrible with engaged content choosing on its own. So what if they just maybe give a slight decelerated priority of those words that are hateful, or what do you think about that? Because that gets into censoring speech, and I don't know. I think we're going to have censored speech either way with technology. But
yeah, I think the social media companies are sort of caught because those are the posts that keep the users hooked, and they want the people to use their product, right? And so why would they promote content that isn't going to get as much engagement? It's you were mentioning before financial incentives. Well, I from what I understand, Twitter actually doesn't make that much money. And so, they need every person on there that they can get for as long as possible. I think in an ideal world, it would be nice if they would sort of, amplify the, nicer things and sort of quell the more vicious things. But I don't know if that could, if in actuality, they would actually implement something like that. So,
yeah. As a social media manager, that idea terrifies me because it's hard enough to get stuff, to break through the algorithm as it is. But who knows?
Well, Dillon, since you have kind of touched on this a little bit, let's talk about using social media as a conduit for positive. And I appreciate your company's mantra of, it might be a negative title, but we're going to have a positive story. So talk about this a little bit more with those genuine human-to-human connections and promoting real change in the world.
So one of our company goals, it's unofficial, we don't have it written down anywhere, but it's to create a place for the good people to gather on the internet. And I don't know if maybe that needs some editing, where a place encouraging people to be good on the internet. It might be better. There's a few places on the internet where there's some encouragement on this. I think there's a guy named Mike Todd who he's an African-American pastor. He's in his early 30s. He's the youngest celebrity pastor that everyone likes. It hasn't done anything for half the world to just hate yet. I'm sure Christians will find something to hate him over. But he's an awesome guy, and he's been able to create this extremely positive experience online just with personality and being positive. So I think there's some hope in platforms like that. And us as a company, we try to give more voice to people like that. So what if people were to focus on whose voice they're amplifying more than on the voice that they're canceling? That's my thought. And I wish there was a way to get people to do that. Another person who I think has had a pretty overwhelmingly positive outlook on a lot of people, Jordan Peterson, as controversial as he is, he's done a lot of good for a lot of people. He's gotten people to take responsibility, rebuild their relationships with their fathers, go and be the person that their family needs them to be. And I'd just be interested to see how we can increase the positive as content creators more. Guys like Tristan Harris, I think, are doing some good. But we just need a lot more of it. And I don't see that happening on our current trajectory. So although I think there's hope, I think it's an uphill battle.
Yeah,
for sure.
Appreciate that. I know when John Krasinski put out his Some Good News videos, oh my gosh, I was living for them. And you're just be weeping or laughing hilariously because it's just good. there's nothing wrong with it. It was good news. And we needed that at that time. So I agree with you. I hope that becomes more of a trend. What about you, Rob?
Yeah. I mean, I think just as important as what we can do, I mean, there's what we don't do. And one thing I would suggest is to, when you see something provocative or controversial or something online, and that sort of provokes a very strong response from you, is to not act immediately, to just take a second and cool off, and to not immediately just click like and retweet or share it, send it to all of your friends, just because the headline is, something that catches your attention, or whatever the tweet has, just has some attention grabbing material. To just let it go and not spread any more negativity than there already is. And, this is reminding me, there is some, I don't know if this necessarily contradicts what I was saying before, but there is some interesting research showing that incivility online is associated with fewer followers. And so incivility it's different than moral outrage. This is like, if I recall correctly in the study, incivility was sort of defined as like name calling, swearing, vulgar references, disgusting stuff. And so people who post a lot of that kind of material tend to have fewer followers, actually. And so that might be another reason to just not share negative material. People aren't going to, they're just going to ignore you. So
you have more anonymity that way when you have fewer followers. So there's less of a fallback. Yeah, that's interesting. I just thought of something. Last time I was up in Canada personally with Carrie, he had to show me this one in person. So I'm going to do my best to explain it via podcast. But so have you ever been on Facebook and you see these outrageous headlines come through your feed that one of your maybe gullible friends have shared, or maybe it's not even a gullible friend, but someone has shared, obviously without checking the article. And it's, some outrageous headline that gets your anger going, and it's by like lifenewsnow.com or some news source that just means nothing and like isn't a certified news source. My boss actually pointed that out and said, anybody who shares stuff like this, it's actually just people using social media to make people angry. Like that is what these strategies are. So when you see these things, unfollow that person. You don't have to unfriend them, just unfollow them, because it's actually having a mental effect on your mind. So you referenced the Atlantic earlier. So that's a well-known news source. I may not agree with everything they say, but I know they're a legit news source. So I'm not going to unfollow someone for sharing something from them. I am going to unfollow someone from, if it's just a news source that has zero views, all it has is the people are sharing it and it's just making people angry. And the content, when you actually click the link, isn't anything to do with the headline, or it's just complete BS when you get in there. So everyone listening, I would say, keep an eye out for, I would prioritize who it's written by on Facebook more than what's written, and look at that first. That was something that I had to learn, and I was shocked at how many there were too. I spent 2 weeks just unfollowing people because of how many of those articles were fake and coming by my feed.
Last question, really quick. Rob, what's a metaphor to help us understand moral outrage narratives in social media?
So there's some classic research from decades ago in social psychology on this idea of group polarization. And so these old studies found that when people hold tentative positions on hot button issues, and you put these people in a room together with each other and have them discuss that topic, gradually they will all come to have more confidence in their opinion on that topic. So basically, when we see our own sort of uncertain opinions reflected back at us by like-minded people, then our beliefs strengthen. And so you start out with something, you kind of maybe believe it a little bit, but then everyone around you kind of maybe believes in it a little bit. Well, after you all talk for an hour, you're all going to believe in it a lot. I think that social media is kind of like this. I think it's similar to that kind of room, because we choose, more often than not, we tend to follow people who we kind of agree with, people that we like, people who sort of share our opinions and our values and our political views and so on. And so these kinds of echo chambers form, and we all, even if you sort of don't have your mind made up about topic X, but you're kind of leaning one way. Well, if you follow 100 people who believe that, you're going to spend a lot of time scrolling and clicking, and eventually you're going to believe that thing much more. So I think, yeah, in a way, social media is like being in a room with a bunch of people that we all agree with, having conversation, and then coming out of that even more confident in our beliefs rather than more curious.
Awesome. What do you think, Dillon? What's a metaphor?
This was the hardest question for me coming in, but I just think of like a pile of embers, all right, on a fire. It's natural, it's normal, it's burning on its own. And I think that's kind of our moral outrage / internal like mechanisms for being angry with other people. Like, it's definitely there, it's definitely valid, and it's definitely like okay that we have these, because sometimes there are just evil people out there or people doing evil things, and we have to go against that. And I bet evolutionary psychology wise, that even goes back to dominance hierarchies and how we try to do the right thing according to the people who we view higher up in the hierarchy, all that kind of stuff. That ember, if I had to pick a metaphor, what social media does is it takes lighter fluid and just pours it on that ember. And then it takes a fan and it just fans air into that fire. So all of a sudden, those natural, normal tendencies to get outraged about things have just been blown into this giant ball of flames. As long as we keep like engaging with the unhealthy dialogue online and seeking out ways to engage in online hatred, the longer that gasoline or lighter fluid is getting poured on the fire. And the nice part of this illustration is you can cut off the flow to the ember. You can. It's just really hard because like they know what they're doing when they're making these devices. Rob, your point about our generation's brightest minds are doing the thinking for everyone else almost. It's a little concerning.
Thank you, guys.
This has opened up so many.
I love these metaphors. Awesome.
Rob, where can people contact you or follow you?
Yeah, they can just follow me on Twitter at Rob K. Henderson. I try not to be too polarizing or express too much moral outrage.
Since I discovered you have been one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter because you're always posting these articles and they're just, I haven't seen them somewhere else. They're from great sources and they're very interesting. You've led me to you've led me to a lot of rabbit holes, but they're good rabbit holes that I'm glad I went down. What about you, Dillon? How can people connect with you? How can they, you speak as well, right? How can people have you come speak or connect with Carrie?
Yeah, pre-COVID, I spoke places. Not anymore, but I'm glad to come on a podcast or a live stream or whatever people are doing. So if you go to, actually, it's going to be almost impossible to find our website, carrienewhoff.com, because Newhoff is spelled way weird. But if you wanted to join, kind of the thing that keeps our company running is we have an email that we send out every day of just, it's leadership content. A lot of it is church related. So if you're a church leader, we've got stuff for you. We've got stuff on productivity, all that. So we'll send out daily stuff in the morning for that. And you can get on there by texting CAREY to 33777. And then if they wanted to find me specifically, I've got a free resource that I've called the Networking Cheat Sheet that is essentially everything I've learned about getting into rooms with people that like someone of my stature shouldn't have been getting into rooms with, and the secrets behind that. And I put it all into this cheat sheet and how to steward those relationships well. So they can find that at dillonmsmith.com. And it'll just be for them there. Yeah,
I wouldn't dare try to lead a church, but I'm on the email list, and many times an email will come through and there's at least a part of it that's very relevant to me, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you both so much. We're coming up on the end of this season. Next week, Amy and I are going to be reviewing what we've learned through this podcast in 2020, starting with our opening episode back in January on, ironically enough, humor, and moving down to the present.
Yeah, and we will make sure that the information from Dillon and Rob are connected to our show notes. And again, thank you guys so much. We want to ask all of our listeners and those who follow us to leave us a review, rate us on Apple Podcasts, become a subscriber to the afterwordpodcast.com. It does help keep the conversations going. You can also find us on Google Podcasts. And as always, remember, you are welcome at our table.